Good morning. At least it is morning now when I am starting to film. You are in the cabinet over the coffee maker, and I need coffee this morning because my husband and I got back from a 4-day trip out to Michigan at about 11 p.m. last night. This mom is a little bit tired this morning. Instead of rushing out to the grocery store to restock the kitchen after a trip, I decided that I would put into practice one of the things that I'm always nagging you guys about, and that is delaying a trip to the grocery store, looking around and seeing what I need to use up in my pantry, fridge, and freezer. So I thought I would take you through that in real time, just kind of do it vlog style for you guys and show you how this works in just a very practical, pragmatic way in our kitchen. And we're off to a good start because I just used up the rest of this protein shake in my coffee, basically as coffee creamer. Yay. I did a quick survey and tidy up of the refrigerator because sometimes getting your family to eat things up is simply about making it more visible so that they will choose it. For instance, I put the leftover pizza and the leftover chicken pockets here in this sandwich prep drawer with the sandwich lunch meat because instead of making fresh sandwiches over the next day or two, they can pack these things in their lunch. I also made sure that yogurts and cheese sticks are moved to the front so that they can see these things that need to be eaten up in the next few days. I double checked the produce bins to see how we're doing on fruits and vegetables and if there's anything that just needs to be used up really quickly. And unfortunately, I did have a few things that needed to be thrown out. It does happen, but this at least helps us see better what we have available so that we will choose it and eat it. Confession, I am not a person who has to eat traditional breakfast foods for breakfast. I have often eaten random things, including leftovers from the refrigerator for breakfast. And I'm not entirely sure what these leftovers are from the Tex-Mex restaurant that my kids' grandparents took them to the other night, but they do make a tasty breakfast. If you follow me on Instagram and you were watching my stories from this past weekend, then you know that we were actually in Michigan because my husband was wrapping up a consulting gig with the church that he's been working with the better part of a year on their capital campaign. And consulting with churches on administrative issues like finance and staffing and organizational health is something he's done on and off for years, but we're leaning into it more because, as you know, if you watched my video about this, we are in the middle of a pretty big life transition. My husband decided to step down from his role as executive pastor at the church that we have served for the last 5.5 years. And that kind of life change, whether it was your decision or it happens unexpectedly, can be really stressful. And some of the things that we are doing to help with stress, first and foremost, we're Christians, so being in the Word of God and praying and really listening for the Lord's direction is important for us right now. Also for me, leaning into the work that I do here on YouTube and on behalf of my family and making sure that we're prioritizing time with the people that we love is very helpful. I'm also a big fan of walking. I actually just got back from a walk, and walking is so therapeutic for me. And speaking of therapy, actually, my husband and I are also both seeing Christian counselors right now that came recommended by a pastor friend of ours. And getting counseling or therapy when you are walking through something stressful can be really, really important and very helpful. And if you find yourself struggling to connect with a counselor in your area to find, affordable therapy, then BetterHelp can be a really great resource, and they're actually sponsoring today's video. It's hard enough when you're walking through a stressful event in your life without the added difficulty of finding a therapist who is trained to listen and can provide unbiased, helpful advice. BetterHelp attempts to stand in the gap where this is concerned by helping connect its users with one of their over 30,000 licensed therapists. What you do is you pull out your computer or your phone or your other device that has an internet connection and you go to their website. It's linked in the description box below, or you can go to betterhelp.com/cmindymom, and they have a questionnaire that you fill out that helps assess what you need and your preferences where a counselor is concerned, and then they send you recommendations. I really appreciated the option to select my preference for a Christian therapist because it's important to me to receive counseling through that lens. There are options for having your sessions via video chat, over the phone, or even via text messaging if that's something that you prefer. Plus, if you get started with a therapist and you feel like it's just not clicking, you can actually switch to a different therapist without incurring an additional fee. As my family has discovered in recent months, life is not without its challenges. Sometimes it's difficult, but getting access to a good therapist to help you through it shouldn't be difficult. Maybe you have a limited number of therapists available to you, or maybe the right one for you just isn't in your area. So let BetterHelp help you out. Visit the link in the description box below if you think you're ready to check it out. The link is betterhelp.com/cmindymom. And again, you can get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp when you follow that link in the description. I know from surveying the refrigerator earlier today that there is a little package of chicken breast pieces from a meal kit that I need to use up. And there's also a few slices of bacon. I guess Grammy and Papa made bacon for breakfast one of the mornings while my husband and I were gone and they were watching the kids. And when I need to use up specific ingredients, a lot of times I will just do a Google search or a Pinterest search with those specific ingredients, and maybe even like the cooking method that I want to use. So like bacon, chicken, Instant Pot or something, and see what pops up. And sometimes it's not a recipe I can follow, exactly. Maybe I don't have all the ingredients, but it just gives some ideas. And sometimes I can get even more specific. It might be bacon, chicken, rice, cream cheese. I mean, you would be surprised the number of things that will pop up that have those specific ingredients in them. So when I do a little search for those ingredients, I found a bacon ranch one pot chicken and rice from the Salty Marshmallow. I'll leave it linked in the description box below. And I think this is gonna work really well. And it looks like you can make it like a one-pan meal on the stove. You could probably do it in the Instant Pot. I'm actually, I think, gonna use my multi-function slow cooker and use that so that I can like cook the bacon and make the rice, like steam the rice, like do it all just in the slow cooker, and then be able to keep it warm as we are gonna be eating in shifts tonight. People coming and going from various and sundry activities. I used kitchen shears to chop up my bacon into little pieces, and I have it cooking here in this Cuisinart multifunction slow cooker on the saute setting, about 300 to 350. If it gets a little hot, I bump the temp down a little bit. I don't want it to splatter. Once the bacon is done, I'm going to remove it to a paper towel lined plate. And I need a couple of tablespoons of the bacon grease for browning the chicken and the onions, and I'll just drain a little bit of the bacon grease out and leave the rest of it for continuing with the recipe. I do have regular onions in my veggie crisper in the refrigerator, but I also have these green onions that are gonna go bad pretty soon, so I need to use them up. So what I'm gonna do is just clip off the ends to saute in here while I'm browning the chicken, and then the tops, like the chive part, I'll save for topping the dish when it's done. But this will add a little bit of onion flavor, and I'll get these used up and out of my veggie crisper. And my chicken, I am discovering, is actually chicken tenders. So again, I'm just gonna use my shears here, and I'm gonna chop it up into small pieces. And I have my saute function on 300, so it'd probably be, like medium low if you're on the stove. And I'm just gonna saute these until they're browned a little bit. They don't have to cook all the way through because they can finish cooking when we're cooking the rice. I am realizing now that I boo-booed just a little bit on planning to make this in this multifunction cooker, because this doesn't have a rice cooking setting. It has a steam setting, so I assumed it would work with rice, but when I look at the instructions in here, it's specifically talking about veggies and using a rack over the top of the water that you pour in to steam your vegetables. So if you make this, just follow the directions. The link to this recipe from Salty Marshmallow is in the description box below. You can make it on the stove. Fortunately, my slow cooker, because it has this saute function and it has a simmer function, I'm still gonna be able to make this all in the slow cooker, but it would probably be easier for you to just do it on the stove. We live and we learn, right? My chicken has been sauteing for about, 4 or 5 minutes or so. Again, I'm not super worried about cooking it all the way through because I'm about to bring it to a boil with the rice, so it'll finish cooking then. I am adding about 1.5 cups of rice. It's what's in this little package, so a little bit more than the recipe calls for. So I'm also gonna use some more liquid. I like to saute the rice in recipes like this, if I can. I just think it, enhances the flavor a little bit. It's gonna soak up the rest of that delicious bacon grease. Yum. And I'm just gonna let that saute for about a minute or so. Now I'm adding a packet of ranch seasoning, 2 chicken bouillon cubes, and I'm adding 3 cups of water since I'm using 1.5 instead of just 1 cup of rice. Now again, since I'm not making this on the stove, I really need this to come to a boil before I turn it down to simmer. So I still have my saute temperature on 300, and I'm just gonna turn the saute temperature up a little bit until it comes to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, I'm gonna switch it over to slow cook simmer, pop the lid on, and then it'll be done when the rice has absorbed all of the liquid. As far as veggies for tonight, I know I have a zucchini in the veggie crisper that I need to make, and that's easy. I just chop it up and like saute it with a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper, and you're done. But then I also have these snow peas, and another quick search on Pinterest shows me from a website called Food Love and Family, I'll leave it in the description box below, that you can toss those with oil and seasonings and put them in the air fryer. So I think maybe I'm gonna try that out, and that'll give us a couple of different veggie sides, because I didn't have enough of either one to stretch for the whole family, but sometimes I just make two and everybody can still have vegetables. This has been cooking on simmer for 15 minutes. As you can see, the liquid is all soaked up and the chicken is very much done. So all that's left to do now is stir in 1 cup of shredded cheddar and my bacon, and it'll be ready to go. Okay, this 10 out of 10 would recommend. It's super tasty, so flavorful. The only thing is, I would say the way I made it today makes 4 generous servings. I mean, it'll be fine for my family because we have, you know, younger kids who don't need like a giant helping of it. But if you wanted to stretch it a little bit, you might double up on the rice and the water, but really, really tasty. It is the next day and I just pulled into the store. I'm at Aldi and my refrigerator is not completely empty, but it is in much better shape for a restock than it was yesterday. Just by delaying going to the grocery store by 1 day, I made sure that we were encouraged to use up stuff that we already had on hand. Maybe you guys have more discipline than I do or than my family does, but I know that had I gone to the store yesterday and restocked it, some of those leftovers would not have been eaten. Some of the proteins and the vegetables that were getting ready to go bad, I probably wouldn't have used. I would have been moving on to the next, you know, meal plan the next week. And that's really the point of this exercise for me, and why it's become such a habit for me, is not necessarily because I need to empty my entire kitchen of every ounce of food before I go and restock it. But it's a practice in good stewardship, making sure that we are using up the things that we've already purchased. And you'd be surprised how those little 1-day delays or 2-day delays add up over the course of a year. Now, I am in the store a lot because I make cooking and shopping content for my channel, so it's sort of an occupational hazard. But before I did this for a living, let's say that I visited the store on average about once a week. So 52 times a year. I mean, that's pretty reasonable to think about for a family of 5, right? And let's say every time I went grocery shopping, I spent about $200. You know, $200 a week is actually a fairly thrifty budget for an American family of 5, according to the USDA recommendations. And I also have to be honest about the fact that food waste is just a thing that happens in most households. And if I know that there is food that we are not eating, because I'm probably the one who's, you know, cleaning out the refrigerator from time to time, then I know that there are some things that are going to waste that we've already purchased. Now let's just say that because of my efforts to delay going to the grocery store by a day or 2 every once in a while and use up stuff that I already have, my average grocery trips drop from 52 times a year to 45 times a year. That would be every 8 days instead of every 7 days. So I'm basically cutting my grocery trips down across the year by just 7 trips. And if I'm averaging spending $200 per trip, I'm saving my family almost $1,500 in a year. So it may not seem like a lot to delay going to the grocery store by just 1 day every once in a while, but it does add up, whether it's, you know, in a big way or a small way. I truly believe it adds up. Now, I do know that sometimes we have to grocery shop on a specific day each week or every other week because that's just the time that we have allotted for it, right? When I was teaching full-time, I would often go out and grocery shop on Saturday mornings because my husband would get up with the children and take them to breakfast and, you know, entertain them for a little while so that I could have a few hours to myself to visit multiple stores. In that case, delaying a grocery trip may not necessarily be possible, but you could make sure that you are shopping your pantry and your fridge first. It would just take a little bit more discipline, which is hard for me sometimes because I'd have to know ahead of time, okay, I've got these items in the refrigerator that I know I have to use up first before I break into the new grocery haul that I'm getting today, and just sort of plan accordingly. But if you are somebody who regularly does that, then you probably know how to get it done and know that it's possible. Besides restocking some produce and other essentials today, I was shopping for 2 videos that I'm really excited about. One of them is a budget meals video, and one of them is a crock pot video about a specific kind of recipe that I've been asked to create multiple times. So be looking for those to head your way very soon. And until then, pick out one of these videos that you can watch next.